Due day, my pilot's son called impossible. She's on my flight, not at home. I was watering the hydrangeas when my phone rang. It was Michael, my son, one pilot, calling from 35,000 feet. Mom, he whispered the sound thick with disbelief. Tell me Laura is at home recovering from that flu. Tell me she didn't get on a plane to Paris. My heart dropped. I had literally just spoken to Laura, confirming she was tucked in bed. But then Michael's voice cut through the static cold and hard. Impossible. She's on my flight, not at home. That's when the lie became a crisis and I knew I had to expose everything. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I just turned 68. I'm a retired high school principal from a small affluent suburb just outside of Chicago. For 35 years, my life was defined by structure, truth, and dedication principles I believed I had instilled in my only son, Michael. He's 38, a captain for a major international airline, a man I'm immensely proud of. He built his life on a responsibility, and he deserved a wife who matched that integrity. That wife is Laura. She's 33, beautiful, charming, and outwardly everything a mother could wish for her son. She works in marketing, or so I thought, at a high-end firm downtown. The initial years of their marriage, all 8 of them, felt like a fairy tale. I saw Laura not just as a daughter-in-law, but as the daughter I never had. We shared brunches, shopping trips, and she even helped me organize my late husband's archives, a gesture of pure kindness, I thought. But our relationship, once so effortlessly close, has lately felt like walking on eggshells. She started pulling away, citing work stress, or increasingly these sudden debilitating flus. Michael's job means he's gone for long stretches, and I used to step in checking on her, bringing soup. Now, knowing what I know, that she was on a transatlantic flight Michael was piloting, I see those flus for what they truly were: alibis. And the betrayal is a physical punch in the gut, aimed not just at Michael, but at the foundation of our entire family. People see Eleanor Vance, the retired principal, composed, firm, the picture of control. But beneath that polished exterior is a deep, persistent ache, a fear of being fundamentally deceived. It stems from my past, from a chapter I rarely speak about. My own mother, when I was only 16, abruptly left our family. She didn't just leave. She manufactured a massive, elaborate lie about needing to care for a sick relative overseas. For months, we believed her. My father wasted money on long-distance calls and medicine shipments. The truth? She ran off with a man she met on a cruise, abandoning us for a life of adventure. The suddenness, the pure theatricality of the deceit, it traumatized me. That's why lies, especially sustained, comfortable lies, feel like arsenic to my soul. When I look back, my eyes narrow slightly, involuntarily. A habit I picked up watching students try to sneak past me. My face is often described as stoic, but inside I'm constantly scanning. I am hyper alert to inconsistencies. If someone's hands fidget when they speak about their whereabouts, my internal alarm bell rings. I learned to read the small physical tells, the slight delay, in an answer, the forced smile that doesn't reach the eyes. This ingrained sensitivity, this need for unwavering honesty, has often made me unfairly suspicious. Michael calls it Mom's built-in lie detector, but it's a burden. It means I want to believe Laura desperately because I love her, and I want my son to be happy. Yet when she said she had the flu, her expression was too flat, her eyes too dry for someone genuinely ill. I dismissed it then, telling myself, Eleanor, don't project your old pain onto her. Oh, but that call from Michael, the moment he uttered that impossible truth, validated every fear. The sick feeling in my stomach isn't just shock. It's the sickening confirmation that the rug has been pulled out from under my family, just as it was decades ago. It's the profound, terrifying realization that the woman I trusted, the woman who shared the most intimate space with my son, is capable of such calculated, cold deception. and the anger is beginning to mix with the raw, old vulnerability. My hands are clenching, not from rage yet, but from the urgent primal need to protect Michael from the same deep-seated betrayal that scarred me. Before this, our relationship, mine and Laura's, wasn't just cordial. It was genuinely joyful. For the first 7 years, it was everything the glossy magazines promised the ideal mother-in-law and daughter-in-law bond. We established a comfortable rhythm, a gentle closeness that bypassed all the stereotypical Mill-Dill drama. I remember her wedding day, when she looked up at me, teary-eyed, and said, "Thank you for raising the man of my dreams." The warmth in my chest was overwhelming. My face beamed with genuine happiness. We had traditions. Every Tuesday we'd meet at the Green Bean, our little coffee shop, for a gossip session disguised as a book club meeting. We'd talk about everything from recipes to neighborhood gossip, and the easy laughter that flowed between us was authentic. Laura would lean in, her eyes sparkling with genuine amusement, and my hand would often rest gently on her arm, in a gesture of shared camaraderie. The atmosphere was always light, airy, and full of mutual respect. When Michael was away flying long routes, which was often 3 weeks out of every month, Laura and I were each other's support system. I didn't hover or criticize her housekeeping. Instead, I focused on making her feel loved and less lonely. I would drop off home-cooked meals, my famous lasagna was her favorite, and leave a small, thoughtful note, "Thinking of you, sweet girl." She would always text back immediately, "You're the best MIL in the world. Eleanor, I love you." That sense of appreciation made my sacrifice feel worthwhile. I never felt the need to compete with her for Michael's attention. I saw them as a unit, and I genuinely championed her success. When she got a promotion, I hosted a small celebratory dinner, my expression radiating pride. She often sought my advice on career moves, or even decorating the house, which I offered gently, always stressing that the final decision was hers. There was a beautiful, easy flow of affection and trust. We were family woven tightly together. The deception makes the memory of this closeness feel like a devastating theatrical illusion, now poisoning every sweet moment we shared. The second Michael's choked voice delivered those words, "She's on my flight, not at home," the shift in my perception was instantaneous and chilling. It wasn't just a discovery. It was the entire timeline of the last 6 months snapping into sharp, agonizing focus. The conflict wasn't a sudden burst. It was a slow, calculated erosion of trust that I and my blind loyalty had rationalized away. It started subtly about 6 months ago. Our beloved Tuesday coffee dates began getting canceled. Laura would call her voice, sounding just a little too strained, saying, "Eleanor, I'm so sorry, this deadline is killing me." My face would show a flicker of disappointment, but I'd quickly replace it with a sympathetic smile. "Oh, honey, don't stress, work comes first." I genuinely thought I was being the supportive mother-in-law, but the excuses escalated. The work deadlines morphed into sudden, blinding headaches, or most frequently, the infamous flu. Each time she called in sick, when Michael was on a long-haul trip, I would insist on coming over bringing soup. She'd always find a polite yet firm way to block me. "Oh, Mom, you know how contagious this bug is. I'm quarantined in the guest room. Please don't risk it." I remember standing in my kitchen, my hand hovering near the phone, feeling a strange, hollow echo. My intuition was screaming that the refusal was too vehement for a simple illness. I chastised myself, convincing myself I was overreacting. I understood the need for privacy. I told Michael, "Your wife just needs space. Don't badger her." My fatal misunderstanding was believing her withdrawal was a healthy need for independence, when in reality, it was a crucial need for operational cover. I felt a pang of loneliness, the loss of our easy closeness, but I attributed it to the natural progression of a married life. My eyes would sometimes cloud with fleeting sadness, but my body language remained open and trusting, unwilling to suspect malice. Then came the morning of Michael's London flight. I called Laura just as he was boarding. She sounded weak, coughing theatrically into the receiver. Just the worst flu, Eleanor. I'm literally going back to sleep for days. When I hung up, I remember looking around my quiet living room. A deep tightness settled in my chest. Something felt deeply wrong. The cough was a little too wet, the exhaustion a little too performative. The image of my own she practiced dismissive lies flashed through my mind, and I felt a brief nauseous surge of suspicion. I violently shook my head mentally, slapping myself, "Stop it, Eleanor. Laura is not." But minutes later, Michael called from the cockpit, moments before pushback. The raw panic in his voice, the sheer impossibility of what he was describing, Laura not in bed, not sick, but standing in line at the first-class gate, carrying a large non-carry-on size designer bag, perfectly healthy, checking in for a different flight out of the same airport just hours after he left. The small searing detail he gave me her wearing the brand new silk scarf I had just bought her for Christmas was the final devastating piece of evidence. In that moment, everything I had dismissed as anxiety distance or illness coalesced into one stark, ugly realization: total calculated deception. The feeling in my body was a cold, sick flood, instantly replacing the genuine warmth I'd held for her. My face went rigid, the lines around my mouth hardening. My eyes narrowed, not in confusion, but with the focused, chilling clarity of a predator spotting its prey. Every sick day was now a planned escape. Every canceled coffee was time needed to coordinate the next lie. The scale of the deceit, built layer by layer, under the protective guise of illness, made my stomach clench, with a mixture of profound betrayal and an icy, uncompromising determination to unearth the absolute unforgiving truth. The initial shock from Michael's call turned into a freezing, calculated rage. But the true turning point happened hours later, when I finally saw the undeniable evidence, not through Michael's panicked description, but through my own two eyes. Michael, bless his heart, was stuck. He was captain. He couldn't abandon the flight, but he was emotionally shattered. He told me he'd discreetly asked a trusted gate agent to check the manifest for the flight Laura was queuing for a direct flight to Nice, France. My heart hammered against my ribs, a dull, frantic rhythm against my will. Nice. Who was she meeting in Nice? I spent the next 7 hours in a state of hypervigilance, my body vibrating with suppressed energy, pacing my Persian rug. My hands were constantly gripping the back of my antique armchair, leaving indentations in the velvet. I hadn't cried. Tears felt like a weakness I couldn't afford. My face was set in a mask of stern control, the muscles around my jaw tight, but my eyes were restless, constantly darting around the room, as if the truth itself was hiding in the shadows. The breaking point arrived at 4:30 p.m. Chicago time. Michael had managed to send me one screenshot via an encrypted message through a friendly contact, Laura's flight itinerary booked under a slightly altered name, L. Vance. Instead of L. Johnson, her maiden name, but crucially, it showed her seat number and a connecting reservation for a luxury villa rental near Cannes. Then the accompanying image, a grainy yet unmistakable photo taken by the gate agent. The photo showed Laura. She wasn't alone, she was laughing. Her head tilted back, her hair perfectly styled, the picture of health and carefree joy. Her hand was intertwined with a man I didn't recognize. He was younger than Michael, impeccably dressed, and he was looking at Laura with an intimacy that made the breath catch in my throat. But the most horrifying detail, the one that broke the dam of my control, was what they were doing with their free hands. They were looking down at a large flat envelope, what looked distinctly like architectural plans or a mortgage document. Seeing her radiant, deceitful happiness, while Michael was thousands of miles away, believing her to be suffering from a fever was the spark. But seeing those documents, those blueprints for a life without my son, that wasn't just infidelity. That was a financial plot. A planned, calculated exit. My calm shattered. A sound ripped from my throat, not a sob, but a deep guttural sound of pure volcanic betrayal. My hands finally let go of the chair, only to immediately fly up and cover my mouth, muffling the cry. My eyes, which had been dry and cold, suddenly flooded not with sadness, but with the scorching heat of realization. I staggered back a step, my entire body reeling as if struck by lightning. The realization I hadn't just been lied to, I had been used as an unwitting accomplice to the financial destruction of my son's life. She wasn't just having an affair. She was building a nest egg, likely draining marital assets while pretending to be too sick to see me. This was cold, clinical malice. In that moment, the loving mother-in-law died, and the retired, fiercely protective Principal Eleanor Vance took over. My expression changed from shock to steel. There would be no more tears, only action. The game had just changed from personal drama to high-stakes warfare. The moment I processed that photograph of Laura laughing in Cannes, and those insidious architectural plans, the maternal instinct to protect Michael fused with my principal's ruthless need for evidence. I stopped seeing Laura as a daughter-in-law and started seeing her as a formidable opponent who had just declared war on my family's future. There was no time for hesitation, only decisive, calculated action. My first move was immediate consulting legal counsel. I didn't call Michael's divorce attorney, that would signal my hand too early. I called Sandra Hayes, my late husband's former corporate counsel, a woman known in Chicago for her absolute discretion and razor-sharp intellect. We met within the hour. My voice was calm, almost unnervingly steady, as I laid out the evidence, the pilot's son's testimony, the fake illness timeline, the international flight, the new man, and crucially, the photo of the building plans. Sandra's eyes widened slightly, impressed by the speed of my deduction. She advised immediate protection of Michael's assets. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of quiet, relentless setup. My hands were steady as I executed the plan. First, freezing joint investment accounts. Michael had given me power of attorney over certain joint accounts years ago for emergency purposes, something Laura had mocked as old-fashioned. It turned out to be our shield. Following Sandra's instruction, I placed a temporary hold on the major joint savings and investment accounts, citing suspected unauthorized access. And this was done discreetly through Michael's financial advisor, a trusted family friend. I felt a surge of cold satisfaction, a small necessary delay to her financial plot. Second, securing digital evidence. Since Laura was officially sick and quarantined, at home her absence was a golden opportunity. I used the spare key Michael had given me for emergencies. Walking into their house, the silence was deafening. My body felt tense, every nerve ending alert. I headed straight for her private office. I photographed her desk calendar, which was meticulously coded with client meetings that now looked suspiciously like travel dates. I found her personal laptop tucked away. I didn't touch it, but I carefully documented its serial number and location for the forensic team. Every click of the camera was an act of justice, building a thrilling high-stakes game. Third, installing covert surveillance. This was the riskiest move, but essential. Laura's flu could end any time. I arranged for a trusted electrician to install a tiny, high-resolution Wi-Fi camera disguised as a smoke detector in a non-private common area, the top of the kitchen cabinets. When the electrician left, I checked the live feed on my tablet. The empty, pristine kitchen was chillingly quiet. I felt a rush of almost giddy relief. Now I had eyes inside the fortress. This would prevent her from staging a scene or claiming Michael locked her out without cause. Finally, changing home access locks. This wasn't to lock her out permanently, but to assert control and protect assets. Michael's travel schedule was unpredictable. If Laura returned early with the intent to empty the safe or grab specific documents, she needed to be deterred. I had the locks on the back door, and the home office changed, leaving the front door key accessible only to Michael's trusted friend, who managed their property, creating a documented chain of custody. If she broke in, it would be a clear violation. The overall feeling was one of intense, focused exhilaration. This wasn't personal revenge. It was the strategic professional defense of my son's entire future. Every action I took was sanctioned by counsel and executed with surgical precision. I was no longer the worried mother. I was the strategic warrior, and the enemy was walking right into my trap, unaware that I had just secured the perimeter and placed a moratorium on her funds. I leaned back in my chair, the camera feed showing only stillness. A faint, hard smile touched my lips. "Welcome home, Laura." I thought the tension in my shoulders finally easing as the control shifted to my side. "Let's see you try to claim you were sick now." Laura returned 3 days earlier than expected. I watched it unfold on the covert camera feed. Her Uber pulled up and she walked to the front door, looking tanned and infuriatingly refreshed. She tried the front door. Finding her key worked. But when she tried the kitchen door, the key to her sick sanctuary, it didn't budge. Confusion crossed her face, quickly replaced by a sharp calculating glint in her eyes. She knew immediately something was wrong. She didn't panic. She went straight to her phone. I knew what was coming. Sandra had warned me, the best defense is an aggressive theatrical offense. The counterstrike was brutal and immediate. She called the police, not to report a break-in, but to report me. The phone rang precisely 30 minutes later. It wasn't Michael. It was a detective from the local precinct. He informed me in a tone dripping with doubt that my daughter-in-law, Laura Johnson, had filed a highly detailed report alleging elder abuse and unauthorized financial access. My breath hitched in my throat. Elder abuse? I was only 68 and perfectly capable. Her story, as relayed by the detective, was a masterpiece of wicked fiction. She claimed that while she was recovering from a severe, debilitating flu, Eleanor Vance, had shown up repeatedly demanding financial documents, citing her irresponsible spending. She alleged I had threatened to cut her off and had in a fit of rage used my old power of attorney to financially cripple her, locking her out of the home office where she kept her medication. The nerve. Her face in the camera feed was now a picture of distressed innocence as she spoke to the officer outside, her hands fluttering dramatically. She was deliberately framing me as an unstable, controlling matriarch, leveraging my retired status and Michael's absence to seize control. Her greatest weapon wasn't infidelity. It was the manipulation of common fears about controlling mothers-in-law. The detective politely suggested I might need to consider getting a psychological evaluation to address these allegations of controlling behavior before they escalated into criminal charges. The blood drained from my face. My hands began to tremble not with fear, but with an electric surge of righteous fury. She wasn't just lying. She was attacking my sanity and reputation using the law as her shield. My inner monologue screamed, "She thinks she can destroy me by playing the victim of a stressed-out, jealous MIL. Not on my watch." The drama had reached a truly venomous, high-stakes peak, and I felt the exhilarating, terrifying rush of being under fire. Laura's move to weaponize the police and the specter of elder abuse was her biggest mistake. It was dramatic, but utterly predictable, and it gave me the legal opening I needed. Sandra Hayes, my attorney, was utterly unfazed by the detective's call. In fact, she was mildly amused. "Perfect, Eleanor," she said, her voice calm and steely. "She gave us jurisdiction. Now we countersue for defamation and financial malfeasance." The final strike wasn't delivered in a dramatic confrontation at the house. It was delivered in the sterile, uncompromising environment of Sandra's conference room 10 days later, with both Michael just back from his shattered trip and Laura present for what they thought was a mediation about the alleged abuse. I walked in, my back ramrod straight, wearing the expression of the principal who was about to expel a cheating student. Michael looked pale, his eyes filled with confusion and agony. Laura conversely looked triumphant, her expression radiating sweet, injured innocence. She tried to touch Michael's arm, but he flinched away. Sandra began. She didn't lead with the affair. She led with the financial plot, the far more devastating blow in the eyes of the court. Sandra placed a meticulously organized binder in front of Laura. Johnson Vance. Sandra began, her voice measured and precise. We have documentation of the accounts you have attempted to liquidate over the last 2 months, totaling $150,000. We also have a temporary restraining order on the remaining joint accounts, effective immediately. Laura's smile instantly evaporated. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles turning white as she finally registered the severity of her legal peril. You claimed to the police that you were violently ill at home, forcing Mrs. Vance to interfere, which you characterized as abuse. Sandra continued, her voice gaining traction and authority. However, we have compelling evidence that you were not in Chicago, nor were you ill. Sandra didn't use the blurry photo of the liaison. She used the undeniable paper trail. First, she presented the official flight manifest from Michael's airline, showing Laura's name for the flight to Paris, proving she was in the same airport, checking in hours after Michael left. Next, the sworn statement from the gate agent Michael spoke to, confirming they saw Laura and the mystery man. These were professional, third-party confirmations. Then came the camera footage. Sandra played a short, silent clip of Laura arriving back at the house, looking healthy, tanned, and frustrated by the locked doors. This footage was dated and time-stamped irrefutably, proving her claims of being sick and quarantined during that period were a complete fabrication used to facilitate her international travel and financial maneuvering. Laura's carefully constructed composure finally cracked. Her face flushed, deep red, blotchy, with sudden uncontrolled panic. This is an invasion of privacy. This is harassment, Michael tell her. Michael, finally understanding the scope of the deception, stood up, his body trembling with a mixture of rage and profound grief. Laura, stop! His voice was a ragged, barely audible whisper. My mother didn't abuse you. You lied to me. You lied to the entire family. If you were sick, where are the receipts for the doctor's visits? He directed his gaze at her, and the contempt in his eyes was absolute. The final nail, Sandra presented the printout of the luxury villa rental agreement near Cannes, booked under the name of the man in the picture for the exact dates Laura claimed to be too ill to see anyone. It was a direct, irrefutable link connecting the affair, the lie, and the financial plot. Laura sank back into her chair, her eyes fixed on the floor, the illusion of her victimhood irrevocably shattered. Her expression was now one of pure, defeated venom. The satisfaction of watching her elaborate facade crumble, seeing the cold, calculated truth finally exposed for Michael, was profound and absolute. Justice, swift and complete, had been delivered in that sterile room. The meeting concluded not with a bang, but with the quiet rustle of signed legal documents. Laura, having been thoroughly exposed, had no choice but to agree to a highly unfavorable settlement drafted by Sandra designed to protect Michael's assets fully. She didn't win a dime from the joint savings and was forced to sell the house immediately, splitting only the equity she couldn't prove she'd tried to steal. She walked out of that conference room, her shoulders slumped, a shadow of the radiant woman who had just lied to the police. For me, Eleanor Vance, it wasn't just a legal win, it was a profound liberation. I hadn't just won the case, I had successfully defended my son, and in doing so faced down the ghost of my past betrayal. The moment Sandra patted my hand and said, "It's over, Eleanor. You did it." The immense weight I had been carrying for weeks, the tension in my neck, the constant tightness in my chest suddenly dissolved. The immediate emotion wasn't gloating. It was a deep, searing sadness for Michael. We drove back to my house in silence. He finally broke it, his voice raw with pain. "Mom, I don't know who she was. I married a stranger." Watching my brilliant, loyal son grapple with this devastating truth was the high cost of my victory. I reached over and gently covered his hand on the console. My eyes burned with unshed tears, not for the loss of Laura, but for the loss of his innocence and the 8 years of a beautiful lie. It was a mournful realization that despite all my careful parenting, I couldn't shield him from the cruelty of the world or the betrayal of the one person he chose to love. However, the overriding feeling was one of absolute justice and deserving closure. Laura deserved every bit of the swift, humiliating end to her plotting. There was an intense, almost physical sense of satisfaction that only comes from dismantling a cruel, elaborate falsehood. I taught her a lesson about integrity boundaries and the folly of underestimating a mother protecting her child. In the weeks that followed, as Michael started the process of selling the marital home, I focused on myself. I started living for me. I rejoined my bridge club, something I had neglected while playing the supportive MIL. I booked a ticket to Tuscany, a trip my late husband and I had always planned but never took. My walk was lighter, my smile genuine, the retirement I had envisioned quiet, dignified, peaceful, was finally here, but it was earned through a battle. The lingering sadness over Michael's pain was still there, but it was overshadowed by the fierce pride in my own strength. I hadn't succumbed to the drama. I hadn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. I had faced deception head on and executed a perfect tactical defense. This was my victory, not just the money saved, but the reclamation of my peace of mind and the firm understanding that I am a woman capable of handling the ugliest truths with grace and steel. I deserved this release, this freedom. It was earned and well-deserved. The adrenaline faded, the court papers were filed, and the quiet settled back into my life. A profound and heavy stillness that brought with it the uncomfortable necessity of reflection. Winning was one thing, understanding the cost of the fight was another. This was the period of internal conflict where the principal's certainty battled the mother's aching doubt. I often sat by the window in the late afternoons holding a cold cup of tea, my gaze fixed distantly on the garden. My face wasn't stern anymore. It was simply weary. Was I right to intervene with such surgical force? Absolutely, she was plotting a financial ruin. But did my past trauma, the deep scarring betrayal by my own mother, oversensitize me and make me rush the conflict? I began to realize my own culpability, not in the deception, but in the environment I fostered. I prided myself on my lie detector, on my ability to spot inconsistencies. Yet when Laura started pulling away 6 months ago, I didn't approach it with open communication. I approached it with guarded suspicion, waiting for the tell. My shoulders would slump as I recognized this pattern. I had been so focused on proving her guilty of something that I missed the early warning signs of a failing marriage and instead jumped straight to the execution phase when the evidence appeared. Was I too eager for the truth? I asked myself, the question echoing painfully in my silent living room. My hands would clench and unclench in my lap as I wrestled with this. When Michael called from London, I felt a terrible, almost perverse confirmation of my lifelong fears. The part of me that was the traumatized teenager whispered, "See, you can never trust anyone." This old wound had provided the energy for my defense, but it also tainted the victory. I hadn't acted purely out of Michael's best interest. I had also acted to definitively defeat the deception that haunted my own history. I was correct in my actions, but my motivation was complexly flawed. I had acted with cold precision, the kind of professional detachment necessary to dismantle a scam. But did I forget the human element, the fragility of Michael's heart? I should have let him lead the initial investigation, allowing him to discover the betrayal at his own pace. By stepping in immediately, securing the locks, and freezing the funds, I spared him financial devastation. But I stole his final moments of control over his own relationship's demise. I often found my eyes welling up with a mixture of shame and self-awareness. I was a brilliant strategist, but perhaps a less than perfect empathetic mother-in-law. I didn't seek to understand Laura's unhappiness. I sought to expose her crime. The former principal in me approved of the outcome. The vulnerable woman, still smarting from betrayal, realized the fight might have been too fast, too efficient, and too devoid of grace. This inner Zhang Se, the righteousness of the win versus the coldness of the execution, was the true aftermath of the war. The crucible of the divorce proceedings, while agonizing for Michael, forged a crucial resolution within me. I realized that my efficiency had been both my greatest strength and my biggest relational liability. The trauma of my past fueled my speed, ensuring a victory, but it also made me jump over the necessary steps of dialogue and emotional processing. The most profound lesson I learned was the difference between honesty and trust. I had always demanded honesty, yet I failed to cultivate trust built on open boundaries and empathy. I learned that my vigilance, born from old pain, had likely created an atmosphere where Laura felt she had to lie, even about minor things, fearing my judgment. When she began pulling away, I should have acknowledged the distance openly. I should have said, "Laura, I miss our Tuesday coffee dates. Is everything all right?" instead of silently compiling a mental file of her excuses. My eyes now reflect a softer understanding of human failing. The principle I take forward is this: empathy is not weakness. It is the lubricant of human connection. I also learned that Michael, despite his grief, is not a child. He is a resilient, capable man, and my overprotection, while well-intentioned, minimized his own capacity to handle crisis. My commitment moving forward centers entirely on Michael. I decided that my role now is to be his sounding board, not his strategist. My new boundary is clear. I will offer advice only when explicitly asked. I stopped checking the financial news every morning and focused on encouraging Michael to heal, letting him dictate the pace. We established a new routine, a weekly dinner where the only rule is no talk of Laura, or the lawsuit, focusing instead on his passion for flying, his career trajectory, and his future goals. My hands now rest gently on his shoulder, conveying silent support and reassurance, instead of gripping a binder of evidence. I am learning to actively listen, validating his pain, without trying to fix it immediately, a task that demands immense self-control, pushing against my natural inclination to manage and control outcomes. The critical flaw in my decision-making was the immediate unilateral action of changing the locks and freezing the funds before talking to Michael. While legally sound and financially protective, this move stripped Michael of his agency at the most vulnerable moment of his life. My rationale was speed and security. My flaw was lack of respect for his adult role. I should have waited for Michael to land, presented the irrefutable evidence, and then together called Sandra Hayes. By acting alone, I reinforced the old, uncomfortable dynamic. I was the principal, and he was the student whose mess I had to clean up. This was a form of emotional overreach, fueled by my own deep-seated fear of betrayal. I realized that my fear of seeing Michael financially devastated outweighed my respect for his emotional need to confront his own crisis as a mature man. I had successfully managed Laura's exit, but I had nearly damaged my relationship with Michael by operating outside the boundaries of partnership. This realization brought a profound, necessary humility. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, seeing not just the victorious warrior, but the mother who needed to apologize for her controlling instincts. I made a solemn promise: never again would I make a significant decision about his life without his explicit consent, regardless of the perceived threat. This necessary apology and boundary correction were the final crucial steps of my growth. Today, la Fanwiba moral message. Tập trung vào bài học và thông điệp dành cho khán giả Mỹ. Teen moral message, 800 words. Looking back now, months after the dust has settled, and the final papers are signed, the greatest truth I can share with any mother, father, or spouse. Watching this, especially those dealing with deception, boils down to 3 core principles: empathy, boundaries, and communication. We all seek justice, and when betrayal strikes, the instinct is to strike back with raw personal fury. But the moral of my story isn't just about catching a liar. It's about the necessary self-control required to navigate the wreckage without becoming a casualty yourself. Empathy doesn't mean forgiveness, but understanding. I failed to practice true empathy with Laura. I saw her unhappiness only as an excuse, not a symptom. If she had been miserable, a conversation, not a surveillance plot, might have led to an amicable separation before the criminal financial plotting. For the audience, remember, before you assume malice, consider misery. If someone is acting out, there is often a deep underlying pain. A lack of empathy won't stop the lie, but it will certainly accelerate the conflict. I learned that having compassion for the situation, even if not the person, can clarify your legal and emotional objectives. Don't let your own past scars blind you to the present reality. Boundaries are non-negotiable walls, not flimsy fences. My biggest mistake was letting my emotional boundary with Michael blur into his marital financial boundary. I had the power of attorney, which was a legal boundary for emergencies, but I let my motherly concern and emotional boundary overrule the adult relationship boundary. When Laura started lying, my personal trauma made me leap over the line to fix it. Every person in a marriage, even a crisis marriage, deserves the dignity of making their own decisions. My victory was financial, but the relational risk I took with Michael was immense. If you are a mother-in-law or father-in-law, your boundary is simple. You advise. You do not execute. Keep your hands clean, and your legal involvement strictly separated from the emotional turmoil. Communication, especially during conflict, must be strategic, not reactive. When Michael first called, my reaction was pure survival act, immediately to protect. But the better move would have been to calmly tell Michael to document everything on his flight land and call me from a private line. My initial reaction was based on the fear of my past. Effective communication means getting all the facts, consulting your counsel, your Sandra Hayes, and then delivering your truth clearly backed by evidence. I was correct to use the camera and the lawyer. Those were strategic communication tools. But I should have communicated with Michael first, not just my lawyer. Never let raw emotion be the lead messenger. Let facts delivered with cold professional precision speak for themselves. That's the American way. Evidence over accusation. The ultimate lesson I want to impart is this: when you fight a deception, fight with facts, not feelings. If you have to step in, make sure you are protecting the innocent party's future, not merely settling your own score from the past. You can win the battle, secure the money, and still lose the relationships if you act without wisdom and strategic restraint. Protect your family, yes, but do it in a way that allows the ones you love to heal and rebuild, standing on their own 2 feet. So that is the end of the war, but the beginning of a new chapter for both Michael and me. The dust has settled, the house is sold, and the silence in my life is no longer heavy with suspicion, but peaceful with the sound of trust being rebuilt. Michael is healing. He is focusing on his flying. And he knows now that his mother is his fiercest protector, the one who has learned to guard her boundaries. This journey taught me that betrayal, however devastating, is an opportunity for profound personal growth. I faced my greatest fear that someone I loved would be betrayed just as I was years ago. And I prevailed not by succumbing to paranoia, but by operating with cold, hard facts. If you are watching this dealing with a situation where your gut is screaming and the evidence is mounting, remember my story. Get legal counsel immediately. Document everything And most importantly, check your own emotional baggage at the door. Fight the battle that is in front of you, not the battles of your past. What boundary are you struggling to enforce? What lie are you letting slip by because you're afraid of the conflict? Tell me your story in the comments below. Like this video. If you believe that justice must always be served, no matter how clever the deception, subscribe to my channel for more insights on managing family dynamics, setting boundaries, and surviving the inevitable storms of life. I'll be sharing how Michael is navigating the dating world as a newly single pilot in my next video. Until then, stay vigilant and stay strong.